I never thought one moment would change how I saw myself, how I felt about love, or how deeply a person's presence could affect me. When I first met Ethan, I didn't even think twice. He was just another man passing through town, a temporary face in a small coffee shop on a cold November morning. At least, that's how it all started. I had gone to that cafe to escape my own house that morning. My life at that point felt like a series of repetitive days. Work, laundry, cooking, and trying not to think about the empty space inside me that had been growing for years. I was 35, divorced for almost 4 years, with a teenage son who spent more time in his room than talking to me. The quiet had become too loud. That morning, I sat at a corner table with a latte, staring out the window at the wind carrying dry leaves across the street. I didn't notice him until he spoke. "Mind if I sit here?" I turned and saw him standing there, tall, in his 40s maybe, with kind eyes and a calm presence. The place was crowded. There were no other seats left. "Sure," I said, moving my purse off the chair. He smiled and thanked me, and for the next 20 minutes, we sat in silence. I thought that would be it. But life has a funny way of filling the spaces you think will stay empty forever. He started coming there more often, always around the same time as me. Sometimes he nodded, sometimes he said hello, and after a week of this strange routine, we finally started talking. His name was Ethan. He was from Colorado, temporarily in our town for work. He told me he liked the quiet of the mornings before his day got crazy. At first, it was casual small talk. But small talk became deeper conversations. We started sharing details we rarely shared with anyone else. He asked me one day why I always looked like I had somewhere else to be, even when I was just sitting there. I laughed awkwardly and said I guess I just never learned how to slow down. He told me he had learned the hard way. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier from cancer. I remember that day so vividly. His voice cracked when he said her name. He told me about how helpless he felt during her last months and how after she was gone, the silence in his house was deafening. I didn't interrupt him. I just listened. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't the only one carrying a quiet kind of loneliness. Weeks turned into months. Coffee turned into evening walks and then dinners. I found myself looking forward to every conversation with him, feeling a strange kind of warmth every time he laughed. I thought I had forgotten what that felt like. There was something about Ethan that wasn't rushed. Everything about him was slow, thoughtful, deliberate. And that made me nervous. I had gotten used to people leaving quickly, taking what they wanted and vanishing.
He wasn't like that.
He stayed. One rainy night in early spring, everything changed. I had been feeling overwhelmed that day, thinking about my life, my son, and all the ways I felt like I had failed. Ethan called and asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. It was the first time he had invited me to the small rental house where he was staying. I almost said no, but something inside me told me to go. When I arrived, the rain was pouring hard, drenching everything. I knocked on his door, and he opened it with that same gentle smile, ushering me in out of the storm. His place was simple but warm. He had cooked, and the smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air. We talked over dinner, laughed over little things, and for a few hours I felt lighter. After we finished, we sat on the couch, and for a moment, the only sound was the rain against the window. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered without even meaning to. "What do you mean?" he asked softly. "With life," I said, staring down at my hands. "I feel like I'm just existing, and I don't even know who I am anymore." He reached over, gently taking my hand in his. That one simple gesture made me look up. His eyes held mine, and I saw something there I hadn't seen in years, understanding. "You're allowed to slow down," he said. "You don't have to have it all figured out. Sometimes you just feel your way through." I didn't even realize I was crying until he reached up and wiped away a tear. And then he just held me. No one had held me like that in a long time, patiently, without expectation. When I finally looked up again, our faces were close. I could feel his breath, and for a moment, I froze. It wasn't a kiss out of passion or desperation. It was slow, careful, like everything else about him. When his lips finally touched mine, I felt every second of it, like the world had gone still. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Time didn't exist in that moment. All I remember is that he made me feel safe enough to let go. The rest of that night wasn't rushed. It was slow. Every word, every look, every touch carried weight. He never once made me feel like I had to be anyone but myself. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel empty. I felt full. When he pulled me close, it wasn't just my body he held, it was everything I had been afraid to show. He filled the hollow spaces inside me not with promises, but with presence. I remember lying there afterward, listening to the rain, his hand resting over mine. "I don't know where this is going," I whispered. "Neither do I," he said. "But for now, I just want to be here. With you." We didn't need to say more. After that night, things between us didn't suddenly become easy. Life was still complicated. My son had questions. My ex-husband had opinions. Ethan's time in town was still temporary. But something in me shifted. I started living differently. I started noticing things, the way the morning light spilled across my kitchen, the sound of laughter when my son actually came out of his room, the way my heart beat a little faster whenever I saw Ethan waiting for me at the cafe. There were days I was scared, days I doubted if I was ready to let someone in again. And every time, Ethan reminded me in his own way that healing isn't something you rush. It's something you feel, slowly, every inch of the way. By the time summer came, we both knew his job in town was almost over. The thought of him leaving made my chest tighten, but instead of running from it, I let myself feel it. On his last night before returning to Colorado, we went back to that same little house. We cooked dinner together, laughed, and then just sat in silence. "I don't want this to end," I said quietly. "Then it doesn't have to," he replied. He told me he wanted me to come visit, that we could find a way to make it work. He didn't have all the answers, but for once I realized I didn't need them. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it isn't fast. Sometimes it's slow, deliberate, and healing. The night he left, he held me the same way he did that first time, slow and careful, and I felt everything, every fear, every hope, every inch of what it means to trust again. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that I deserved it.